Tea on deck, and you know what's up, my dudes. MXGP 2021, or whatever the hell it's going to be called. Yeah, we're starting to get right around that time frame of where we start to see the the new trailers and things like that for the new Milestone Motocross game. Not really sure. I mean, I guess it is possible that we don't get one this year at all, even though I highly doubt that. I think we are going to get another one this year. If we was not going to get one of the Milestone Motocross games, it would have been last year of all the years, and we still got one last year, even though it was like, 3 or 4 months later than when we normally do get one of these games. Normally they come out around like the, August, September, like into summer type time frame, in relation to the Supercross games that come out earlier in the year. But last year, I think MXGP 2020 came out at like sometime quite a bit later in the year, like more so like winter type time in the year there. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about in this video, what I think is really critical for them to do at this point. I mean, I've been talking about it for years, the old Spency boy. A lot of this stuff is kind of repeated stuff, but it's just like some of these things, it's just, I cannot believe that they still haven't really improved upon it or fixed upon it in these Milestone Motocross games. Number one thing out of all of it that's just like head-scratching, unbelievable, what the hell are they doing, is the terrain deformation. I mean, I just got done doing a live stream on Reflex. Be sure you got that notification bell hit on my channel so you can see whenever I'm live streaming. Been doing quite a few more of those here recently, but just got back on there on the Sandwick track, right? A game from literally 10 years ago feels like it's 10 times more advanced of a terrain deformation system than what we have in games from 2020. It's unbelievable. I just don't get it. I don't get it. And it's like Milestone has just went backwards with the terrain deformation. Even when you go in there and play MXGP 3, it's like, what the hell happened? I mean, the terrain deformation is definitely more in MXGP 3 than it is in these modern MXGP games. I don't know if they're just like kind of not doing it to avoid, bugs and issues. I don't know what the hell they're doing. If it's like a new game engine and they don't really want to mess with it too much, I don't know. But it is literally non-existent in MXGP 2020. It's non-existent. It is the most least amount of terrain deformation that we've ever had in a dirt bike game, like in 10 years or more. Since they started doing it, I have to say this is probably the lowest amount of terrain deformation we have ever had. So that should be their number one focus, really, in all reality, in their next game. Because if they don't do that, they're already on this hamster wheel effect of everything feeling the same. Why the hell do I really want to buy the next MXGP game? So there's really got to be like this reason for it. And if they don't start to really improve on these things that are just totally missing out of their games, then I just don't see the real reason. I mean, even MXGP 2020, like if you played MXGP 2019 and you played some of the other ones, I don't see any reason to even buy this game. Yeah, it looks good graphically. It's a, an eye candy next gen kind of game, but that's all it really is. It's just a graphical next gen game. So it's like, okay, you want to spend $60 on a next-gen version of MXGP 2019? That's really what you want to do? Because that's all this game is. I mean, there's not really any more advanced air physics. There's not really any more track content that you would have had it versus any other MXGP game. I think that's another thing that's really hurting these games and making them kind of where a lot of people don't really play them for more than a few months is... It's just like all these other games like Reflex and MX Simulator and MX Bikes, they have so much more track content that it's just like those games feel endless as far as what you can ride on in the game versus these, Milestone, Supercross, or Motocross games. Of course, now that they finally gave you the track editor in the MXGP games, that does help a little bit, but it still is just nowhere near. I think that's the three biggest things they need to do with these newer milestone games is, number one, terrain deformation. Number two, figuring out a way to give you more track content. I don't know if that's a system of bringing, like, somehow making it to where you can ride on the, like, older tracks in the newer games, so it gives you, like, more different kind of content in that sense, or bringing all the different free ride tracks that we've ever had into one of the newer games, so you have, like, 5 different free ride tracks to ride on. That would be pretty cool. They got to do something there, track content wise. They got to find a way to where it's not like they just come out with a new milestone $60 AAA game and then they 6 months later they come out with another game and that wipes all the track content that they just made in the game before, and then 6 months after that they come out with another game that wipes all the track content that they had in the games before that. And then it's just like, it seems so counterproductive what they're doing with the track content in these games. It just seems so, I don't even know how to explain it. Just so not using their resources properly, not finding ways to, like, carry over. You would think there would be some sort of legacy track racing system in these games where it's like the new one comes out, but then yet you can still go race on the 19 series, the 18 series, which would have been like MXGP Pro, right? So you would imagine that you'd be able to do that, but you just can't. They come out with these new games and it's just that new whatever series, that you're racing on track-wise, and there may be one new track, but really it's just a remade, rehashed version of what you already had in the past 69 MXGP games. That's all it really is. So it would be really nice to see them do that. And then also, the track editor, I don't think was what any of us really expected it to be in MXGP 2019. And I still don't think it was anything we really expected it to be in MXGP 2020. I still think there is so many things they could do with the track editor in these games to give you way more of a actual motocrossy editor, being able to really put roughness on the track and pre-made ruts on the track and, adjust how much the deformation is going to do on a certain track and the kind of dirt compounds. I just don't think they have nowhere near enough of those kind of editing options in the track editor. So I think that's some of the three massive things, obviously not talking about physics, but that's some of the three massive things that would add so much to the replayability of their games and not feel so much like just a little quick, get on there for 3 months and then let's move on to the next thing, I feel like so many guys out there, especially PC players, they'll buy the new milestone game, they'll play it for 2 or 3 months, and then they'll just go right back to Reflex, or they'll go right back to MX Simulator or right back to MX Bikes until the next milestone game comes out. Then they'll play it for 2 or 3 months. There's just no longevity to the games. There's just absolutely no longevity, replayability to these games. Yeah, it's fun to go back in there on MXGP 3 and fart around like nowadays, but it really ain't all that much fun to go play like Supercross 2 or Supercross 1. I mean, yeah, it's kind of, just if you haven't played it in a long time, it's kind of interesting to go back in there and play it for like a day, but it's not fun to go in there and really play it seriously again. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what I'm getting at. Whereas all these other games like Reflex, MX Sim, MX Bikes, the way they make those games and the track content and the physics systems and things, it just has this ability to make you want to come back for more and more and more. And you just play those games for unlimited amounts of time and never really hit like a skill gap pinnacle. It feels like you can always get better in those games. These milestone games, you kind of hit a little pinnacle with them and it just feels like there's not really much more to it, So that's a lot of the big things I want to see. Definitely let me know down in the comments what you guys want to see. I don't know, man. Milestone's going to have to pull something out of their ass. They're definitely going to have to do something. And it's like, even if they came out with this amazing terrain deformation system in this next, milestone motocross game. It's not really that crazy of a thing. Like, yeah, I know everybody would be hyped for it, and oh my God, they finally got terrain deformation. Look at that, Spencer. But like, really, in all reality, they should have had it 3 games ago. With the kind of terrain deformation they had in MXGP 3, if they would have stayed on that kind of progression, they should have already had an amazing damn near reflex level terrain deformation system, like all the way back in MXGP Pro or some shit like that, They should have had that all the way back then. So it's pretty pitiful that we now have this literal non-existent terrain deformation. You can't even see it. It's doing nothing in a milestone game in 2020. It's unreal. It's unacceptable. By far unacceptable. So I'm just hoping they can get their shit together with that. I don't know if we're ever going to get a Lucas Oil Pro Motocross replica game. That would really be the move. Of all the things they could do, that would really be the fucking move. Because it would be like a breath of fresh air, man. We've just had these... You got to think, like... We had these MXGP games, years and years before we started getting the Supercross games. So I feel like the Supercross games still have at least a little bit of a fresh feeling to them, because even though we're on Supercross 4, it's like, you do realize we're basically on MXGP, 6 or 7 at this point? So it's just every new MXGP game they come out with, it's just getting more repetitive, more stagnant, more like having to get something new, or it's just not worth buying, because they have come out with so many of them. And the tracks just, you can just tell they took the track. They've been taking the tracks they've had this whole time and just like tweaking upon what they already have. They don't build things from scratch in these games. They don't rip everything down and then make it all from scratch again. So what that creates is this it kind of feels like you're playing the same shit over a, 7 to 8 year time span. Even though the games have changed and they have improved in some ways, it's just, you see what I'm saying though? Like, they're starting to get in that hamster wheel mentality of that Call of Duty type almost mentality, where it just doesn't change as much as a game should change. And so then it kind of gives you that sort of vibe. But either way, I haven't played this game in 6-7 months. So I'm like all over the place here. But I couldn't give a shit about playing this game ever again, to be completely honest with you. I have no desire whatsoever to go back and play MXGP 2019 or MXGP 2020. Like, if I'm going to go back and play an MXGP game, it's going to be MXGP 3, period. Straight up, man. That should be enough to tell you, they need to go back to the drawing boards a little bit and figure their shit out, because it's just, I think of all things, these newer MXGP games, they're just more boring than anything to me. Boring is the right word for it. That's really all there is to it, man. So, either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.